Sobe wuse Wasi vese Loko da bamaze Illa yakadallahu ma lam yakuni Wala yakuni abadan limulkini Simba manumaro Abu janando Bamba mulmoro Tijamu boro Bamba
mariage mariage wari kula nyawa
Binga sa sok legi ay Philip Noah I'm not 12 years Man I'm 12 ans Yeah, you Philip Noah I'm not 12 ans Don't find the world I'm getting 12 ans Happy birthday to me I'm getting 12 ans Vivian, you're not brother I'm not 12 ans I'm not 12 ans I'm not 12 ans Kanuti bye bye Kanuti bye bye Ye mua gratayat Lima ya kati moy Moku gidal tuma digal tek ndaw si Manam Hot bu nice bi mu amee Vivian am naa rumoni lu mu way melodi la daf may daaneel dëgg la loxo ci waay waay dëgg la dëgg la dëgg la dëgg la wow Vivian
li tàngalema
ku ci tàcc wala yàlla la mariage la def la ilaha illallah mariage ko attention Wally attention Carlo D attention Grand Théâtre est-ce que pare ngeen hey xaar
bye bye Wally yow bye bye yeah yeah yeah
merci Wally waaw waaw
joyeux anniversaire
merci Carlo
dina ko get out
Jaasam Fay Baye Fallu sayo te géegew leen salal Muhammad walal Muhammad di ku ndaaku dal na sore asalo Fay yoo gay gay ne fi nga jàpp nag bayil mu bëm bu ko xotti yow bayil mu bëm bu ko gaañ yow bayil mu bëm yàlla mën ko yow bayil mu bëm yow mu naa yow nga jàng ak sëf saful gay ne ñaay yowal moom la borom kër war a am sa kër ga Malick Gakou di jaay sa maam Ramou Ndiaye mag la gaynde teral la yaay daat bay daal a Rambo dafa am fecc bu bees tàkk-tàkk mi ngi tudd Sikulu sa ñaari loxo ci kanam nga mel ni kuy witt mango sa ndigg ci ginnaaw ngay biiju di biiju kaay feccal Sikulu feccal Sikulu ay la neexee fecc say la neexee feccal fecc Sikulu kon harmonie ay waay harmonie ndeysaan ar gaay moomin
xam ci lu ma ne laqatu woon bëgg a defam bu baax sant yàlla jenn biram samba Islam,
Cosano serero, ya me conoce, cosano serero, ay. Cosano serero, hadiju cosano serero lay def. Ay waay, du yaay ko di ci gamu gel waro. Babu ngom cosano serero lay def. Sambayane ngajay digi jorna njay atu man njay ma njay ngone amu demba bayu mar wi beuri da ngay daan ma sel mbañu daan lamb ji sàcce mbeur ma waaf ci geew ba ari mbeur yi bu ñu rofo ba daano njaaxanaay sawai tenan mada bari josani mamla di bare bermi day bare mani barel barel bermi day bare bakule le 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 mandi da may dem ba jofio Marcel Jaay soxna daba mooy yaayam baaya waa gilaas yëngulee si ma day ma way seen doom yi li nga doon danga ko doon Marcel doomu yaay Tafa Jóob man de damay dem ba Ñaaxar seeti papa Boucar Diouf Fatou Seen mooy yaayam suñu yaay jëteelere Ousmane Dike lam dooro jojo ko du dawraas waaw mi bëreel mbër mi day bëree bëreel mbër mi day bëree bëree leen Sénégal cosaanu séeréero Marcel Diouf yor arrondissement ak Ndama Thiam bato Sénégal cosaanu séeréero waaw walaay Diouf yor arrondissement ak Ndama Thiam Marcel bato Sénégal cosaanu séeréero waaw walaay Bokor Diouf yor arrondissement Abdou Ndama Thiam bato Sénégal cosaanu séeréero waaw walaay Demba séeréer birom nit ku nekk am nga kii lay bégal sama xarit yaay wal ma Aziz Ale Njaay mooy baaya doomu yaay Ilimaan Laama Ilimaan Shirimati Njaay doomu yaay Baay Njaay Aziz Baay Ale Njaay wal ma Ibra Gay Njaameeg ma Xaasim ak Seynabu Amadou Caam Fatim Si Malik Caam doomu yaay ko fet Caam Lamin Ndaw li nga doon ko doon Lamin Ndaw li doon tooñee Ndaw walla tengte bi dana mat na jaam gauche bi mbag walla tengte Saliou bi dana mat na jaam waaw ni kiri ko yow kiri ko Sam Fall su gi cinéma ay bëtam taxul amaana sax musique ba la dégg moo seen xolom Sidi Diop su gi cinéma ay bëtam taxul amaana sax musique ba la dégg moo seen xolom jamaa bi walla teng bi dana mat na jaar may naa jaar bi bëgg walla teng bi dana mat na jaar ay waay ñu su gi cinéma ay bëtam taxul amaana sax musique ba la dégg moo seen xolom Sénégal cosaanu séeréer waaw wallaay
I'd like to introduce your host for today, Harold W. Brooks, Senior Vice President of International Operations at the American Red Cross, and Vincenzo Ballatino, Executive Director of the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative.
Andy, good morning, and thank you so much for that kind introduction. I'd like to welcome all of our listeners to this webcast for the launch of the 2013 World Disaster Report. This year's report focuses on technology and the future of humanitarian action. It's really hard to overstate the impact technology is having on humanitarian action, and our presenters will address the myriad ways that this is happening. Understanding the impact of technology on humanitarian assistance and how to measure it and evaluate it is one of the key programmatic objectives of the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative. This year's World Disaster Report is the product of close collaboration among the International Federation of the Red Cross, the American Red Cross, and the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative. The report represents the importance of research in humanitarian action and the benefit of collaboration between humanitarian organizations and academic institutions. I'm really delighted to be able to co-host today's webinar with my colleague, Harold Brooks, Senior Vice President of International Services for the American Red Cross. Mr. Brooks manages the international activities of the American Red Cross with responsibilities ranging from international humanitarian law, family tracing services, international policy issues and strategy, healthcare and disease prevention, as well as disaster preparedness, response, and recovery. Mr. Brooks' Red Cross service spans 30 years with leadership positions in Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Atlanta, San Francisco, and New Jersey. Harold, it's really a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Enzo. It's a real delight to be here in Cambridge. The objectives of the event are to launch the 2013 edition of the World Disasters Report, also called WDR 2013. The focus is on technology and the future of humanitarian action, and we're doing it today, the 17th of October in Boston, and there was a media event in Geneva on the 14th. As was mentioned by Andy, this is also going to be a video online at ifrc.org. The WDR 2013 examines the profound impact of technological innovations on humanitarian action, how humanitarians employ technology in new and creative ways, and what risks and opportunities may emerge as a result of technological innovations. The responsible use of technology offers concrete ways to make humanitarian assistance more effective, efficient, and accountable, and can in turn directly reduce vulnerability and strengthen resilience. Finding ways for advances in technology to serve the most vulnerable is a moral imperative, a responsibility, not a choice.
Thanks very much, Harold. This live web seminar will address a number of ways that technology is transforming how local communities respond to disaster and how the international aid community engages in disaster response. The panelists will also consider some of the dilemmas presented by the proliferation of technologies globally. Among the questions that I've had in reading the report include what are some of the ethical and social challenges associated with the use of technologies for communication with disaster-affected communities, with data gathering and decision-making based on that data, on those data? What are the practical and moral implications of the so-called digital divide, and how do we address those? Which organizations are vested with the duty of creating and maintaining standards and guidelines for the use of existing and new technologies in humanitarian assistance? I hope that these, and I'm sure many of other questions that online listeners will have, can be addressed in today's live web seminar. Harold, would you introduce our panelists today?
We have a really wonderful panel today, and led by Dr. Patrick Vink, editor of this year's WDR 2013 and director of the program on vulnerable populations here at HHI. We have Laura Howe, who's Vice President of Public Relations, American Red Cross. Rebecca Curzon, who is Senior Program Manager, Corporate Citizenship and Corporate Affairs at IBM. Matthias Schmali, Undersecretary General, National Societies and Knowledge Development at the IFRC, which is International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, and Gary Fowley, head of the Liaison Office at the United Nations International Telecommunication Union.
That's fantastic, Harold. Thank you so much. To introduce my colleague, Dr. Patrick Vink, who's the Director of the Program on Vulnerable Populations at HHI. Dr. Vink is an associate faculty member with the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative and research scientist at both Brigham and Women's Hospital and the Harvard School of Public Health. At Harvard, Dr. Vink leads the Program for Vulnerable Populations, where he focuses on implementing empirical studies and evaluations on such things as trauma and exposure to violence in conflict-affected societies, and perceptions and attitudes about peace, justice, and reconstruction. He also manages projects and research on vulnerability analysis, food security, and displacement. And finally, Dr. Vink co-founded Kobo Toolbox, a digital data collection project to advance social science research. He is also the editor of this year's 2013 edition of the World Disaster Report. Patrick, it's really a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Harold. Thank you, Enzo, for introducing and hosting this webinar. This is a very exciting time for us to talk about technology. There are so many initiatives happening on the ground, so many programs, projects emerging, and really what we were trying to do with this report was to take a critical look at what is happening, what is positive, what are the lessons learned so far. We're going to talk a lot about technology, but this report really is about humanitarian effectiveness more than it is about technology. It is about how do we make sure that humanitarian action is as effective as possible, that we save as many lives as possible. So technology is a tool in that process. What we really need, what are the key factors, are humanitarian action that is more responsive to the needs of the population, where communities are not just recipients or beneficiaries of humanitarian action, but they are really critically involved in shaping, in deciding what is needed and how it should be delivered. We also need humanitarian action that is based and rooted in data, that is data enabled, so that we have better information about what is needed, where, how it can be delivered. Finally, we need humanitarian action that is also driven by evidence about what works and what doesn't work. So all these aspects are essential for humanitarian effectiveness, and technology can enable them. The additional component to that is the delivery itself of the assistance. How can we better deliver, whether it's preparedness, whether it's response to disaster approaches. So technology is a critical factor in those aspects. For example, when we think about enabling the communities to be partners and not just merely recipients, people are now increasingly connected, so they can send messages, they can be involved in a dialogue, we can reach out to them using both traditional media but also social media, so that they actually have a voice and participate in this process. Another aspect is more data-enabled humanitarian action, as I was mentioning. We can use satellite imagery, we can use crowd mapping or crowdsourcing of information, so that we don't replace traditional means of collecting data, but we enhance the information that is available. And that information then allows us to make better decisions about intervention, about action, and where to work. So another example of that is the increased use of digital data collection platforms, where paper-based data collection is now directly automated, so that you skip those lengthy process of data entry, of handling papers, but you have information that is readily available. Finally, thinking about delivering more efficient assistance, one can think of many direct examples. One that has been rapidly adopted by humanitarian actors would be cash transfers. Think about the efficiency of transferring in money directly to an individual through his cell phone, as opposed to a physical money transfer. when you have physical money transfer, there is a lot of leakage, which is a nice way to say that the money goes into different pockets, but not necessarily those of the intended beneficiaries. There is also transaction costs, overhead costs. So this is a really good example where technology is actually making action much more efficient. Other elements include better beneficiary tracking so that we ensure that the people actually receive the services that they are supposed to receive, and that over time they continue to receive the services that they need. So technology is a critical, and I would argue is probably the single most important critical factor in making humanitarian action more efficient. That said, it comes with many challenges. Enzo mentioned the digital divide, which is a major concern because we don't want to end up with humanitarian action that is biased and focuses only on communities that are connected. So we need to be mindful of the availability and the connectivity of the communities that we are working with. Other aspects are that these innovations, these new technologies or new applications of technologies are happening largely organically. They are happening outside of humanitarian traditional actors. And so we see many new actors emerging and taking a role in humanitarian response. This is fantastic. It means mobilization, social engagement from various actors. But at the same time, it means that we see individuals and organizations who are not necessarily rooted in humanitarian principles, who don't have necessarily the practice and the long experience of dealing with challenging issues of neutrality or impartiality in how we engage in humanitarian action. Organizations who sometimes are more activists than they are humanitarians, and those raise major concerns, especially when you deal with complex crises that involve conflict or violence. So we need guidance, we need better bridging between actors who have that knowledge and that experience and actors who are new to the field but are bringing technology initiatives and are very much innovating in this space. So I'll leave it at here. This report really raises many of these questions, and we don't have necessarily all the answers to them. But the point was really to bring those to the forefront and make sure that there is a definite and resolute engagement in technology from humanitarian actors, but at the same time that engagement is cautious and mindful of the challenges ahead, and that we address them directly and be mindful of those issues. So, thank you.
Patrick, thank you very much for that presentation. It occurred to me that local communities are utilizing technologies in a variety of truly innovative ways, and I'm wondering, is there any transfer of knowledge directly amongst local communities in a manner that allows them to learn from one another's experiences? In other words, local community level driven transfer of knowledge to other similar local communities that might benefit from the experiences of those that have come up with innovative solutions. Have you seen any of this in the research that you led this year?
Some of that is again happening largely outside of the traditional humanitarian response. It is simply communities connecting with each other, being able to read each other's tweets or information exchanges. And so we see a lot of organizations collaborating and spreading practices that have happening elsewhere. Say a group in the Philippines that has innovated with sending SMS messages to communities at risk. Well, then that inspires another group to take similar initiatives in Kenya, for example. So we see a lot of that kind of cross-pollination across the board. At the same time, there is probably a need to do that in a more structured way, so that the lessons learned are more formalized, they become institutionalized, and at the same time they benefit from the input of maybe more experienced actors who again are mindful of humanitarian principles of do no harm. That is really, really critical, because many of these actors are just learning things that we already know in many ways, not to put sensitive information publicly, how to deal with people who are traumatized and not re-traumatize them because we're not delivering the appropriate action, building a school in the appropriate way so that it's not on favoring one group over another and creating conflict. These are things we know, and we need to create more formal forum to do this. We hope that actually the site that is associated with the World Disaster Report will be one of the avenues to do that. The site allows for people to post comments, exchange IDs and information, and so we really encourage people to visit it.
I have a question. And you referred to principles during the course of your talk, and we're really proud to have at the back of the WDR 2013 the fundamental principles from the Red Cross. Talk a little bit about the consequences of actors, well-intended, but who are not working from a set of principles.
Sure. I may actually address this in two different ways. One is an interesting challenge and deals really with technology that sometimes largely emerged from the military, and that is now being adopted by humanitarians, large and small, local or international organization. These range from the use of satellite imagery with level of precisions that just a few years ago were limited to intelligence officers, to the use of drones. Even though it's very limited, we actually see starting deployment of unmanned aerial vehicles in humanitarian settings. There is a risk really that these applications see or are seen as being military in nature, as being intelligence scheduling in nature, and so that humanitarian actors are no longer seen as the impartial agents as they should be, but they are seen as maybe working for a specific government or another. This then in turn can impede the access that humanitarian actors may have to challenging situation. One can think to Sudan and Darfur, for example, where any association with information gathering, with intelligence, with military operation would of course be a reason for the government not to grant access. Access to communities at risk remains the predominant and the critical factor. If we don't have access, we can't do anything. So we need to guarantee that access, and so neutrality is important. In those principles, you've got questions of neutrality, impartiality, and it is a very, very hard balance when you want to do advocacy at the same time. So in the past, when an organization could have a specific dialogue with an armed group, for example, in the field, and have a different dialogue at home about how wrong what is happening on the field is, that could work. But in a connected world, that doesn't work as simply as that. So you put out a message, those armed groups see that message. And so there are consequences that again turn into either humanitarians being targeted or not being granted access to the communities that they need to. The last point I will make with that is that we are a community. People at risk, communities at risk, rebel groups, disaster, natural disasters don't make a difference between one organization or the other. So the consequences of one organization apply to everyone else. So if one group starts giving information or intelligence to the military, for example, that affects everybody else and the credibility of everyone. So these are really, really important. That's why we need to be really responsible in how we approach this field, how we approach technology.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now we're going to turn to Laura Howe. She's Vice President of Public Relations at the American Red Cross and is an amazing storyteller. She's responsible for all public relations and corporate media strategies for the American Red Cross. She's an amazingly wonderful spokesperson for the organization, and whenever there's something big happening, Laura is in the middle of it. She started her Red Cross career in Birmingham, Alabama, with the chapter there, and has been really just such a leader. When it comes to social media, we have a thing called the DigiDoc, or Digital Disaster Operations Center, that she's the thought leader and power behind. So you're really lucky to have an opportunity to hear from Miss Laura Howe, graduate from Missouri School of Journalism, and she's been active as a news reporter and anchor in stations throughout the Southeast. Laura, welcome.
Thank you so much, Harold, for the kind introduction. I really do appreciate it. I wanted to start today with a little bit of a story, actually, and talk a little bit about where our journey began at the American Red Cross, because our use of social media, our use of technology really began during the Haiti earthquake, I think in its truest form. And when the earthquake happened in Haiti in 2010, our social media team immediately began receiving messages from the Haitian diaspora community here in the United States. And they were providing us via Twitter, via Facebook, very specific information about needs on the ground inside Haiti, particularly in Port-au-Prince. And they were getting that information from relatives, from friends on the ground who were sending them SMS texts with very specific information about what neighborhoods needed food, needed water, places where people were trapped. We didn't quite know what to do with that information at the time. And we eventually sort of figured out how to get the information routed to someone on the ground who could act on it. But it really was an eye-opening experience for our organization to see the power that technology and social media could have, particularly with people who were telling us and reaching out to us about needs that were happening. So that was really the start of a process for us to use technology, and particularly social media, to engage both the general public during emergencies and most particularly those who were affected by disasters and emergencies, and really give them a seat at the table of our emergency response efforts. And we didn't have a great starting point. So one of the things that we did over the last 3 years is we did a series of public opinion polls to look at how the American public was using social media, using technology during emergencies. And we found a couple of key things. First of all, we found that social media and mobile apps were tied as the fourth most popular way for people to get information in emergencies. And they were right behind some of the other key media, television, radio media that people use to get information during an emergencies, and closing in quickly, I should say, also on those formats. 1 in 5 Americans told us they used a mobile app to get information during an emergency. And one of the other things that was so stunning to us is that more than 76% of Americans expected help to arrive within 3 hours of posting a need on a social media site. And not only did that tell us that people were using technology and they saw it as a way to communicate, but there was also a tremendous public expectation that someone would be there listening if they posted information. So that really set us on a path to build a social philosophy that did a couple of things at the American Red Cross. First of all, we want to empower online social communities to help us execute our disaster relief mission. We want to provide valuable news, information, tools that people who are affected can use to prevent, prepare for, and respond to emergencies. We also want to listen, and we want to engage and act on those public conversations that can help us improve our services and make operational decisions. One of the other things that has been very key for us is making social engagement and making technology part of the operational DNA of the American Red Cross. And basically that means that we want our volunteers, we want our employees to feel welcome to engage in the social space, give their expertise, and reach out and help people through these technology platforms. One of the key things that we did that you heard Harold mention a few moments ago was our Digital Operations Center, as we very lovingly call it, the DigiDoc. That is a physical space that is actually opened up in our Disaster Relief Operations Center headquarters in Washington. It's a social listening center, and it's the first of its kind that's being used for humanitarian purposes. And what that allows us to do is to provide all the people who work in our digital or in our operations center to allow them access to data visualizations of information from the social space. It really serves for us as a coordination center for social media engagement and with the public during both domestic and international disasters. And it's one of the things that has really helped us manage our data better so that we can use that for our decision makers in our organization. And while the technology and the hardware and the physical space of the DigiDoc is great, the backbone of that center really is our digital volunteer program. And we've launched that over the last year and a half. We opened the Digital Operations Center in March of 2012. The digital volunteer program came into existence very quickly after that. And we now have 160 trained, vetted, background-checked American Red Cross volunteers who are specially trained to listen in the social space, gather situational awareness, and engage in two-way conversations with people who need help. So not only collecting the information about where help is needed, but also disseminating information, providing emotional support to people. That's been very key for us as well. And so those volunteers have really been the backbone of our effort. One of the other backbones of our effort really has been our mobile app program as well. And because so many people in the United States use mobile apps to get that information, as we saw in our surveys, we embarked on a program to really enhance our mobile applications. We have 6 of them launched since June of 2012. They've had about 3.7 million downloads. There's a wonderful first aid app. There's also 5 disaster-specific apps and an app that also helps us with volunteer recruitment during disasters as well. Those apps have had 140 million page views. They also contain weather and emergency alerts, and we've sent 60 million of those alerts out to the American public since June of 2012. One of the things that really differentiates these apps from others are the time that people are spending inside them. We've been finding that they actually spend quite a bit of time looking at the information, particularly the disaster preparedness information. And we've also set on a path to share these platforms and share this information with other Red Cross societies. So our Global Disaster Preparedness Center, which is a joint venture of the American Red Cross and the International Federation, has been piloting a universal first aid app platform that we've been sharing with other National Red Cross societies so they can localize the apps with translation information, content, images that are localized, and branding that is localized. And in September, these apps launched in Australia, Canada, China, Ireland, Israel, and Mexico. So we're very excited to be sharing that technology worldwide. One of the other events that really has been key for us in sharing technology and making great strides was Superstorm Sandy. And I think most of you are familiar with what happened in that disaster. But those who were affected really had a seat at our emergency response table in new and different ways. And they helped us understand where the needs were greatest. So not only do we disseminate the information and collect data, but we really were able to engage in very meaningful conversations with people. One of the things that was key for us at that point was making sure we got this emergency preparedness information out. And because of the social media push, we had about 400,000 downloads of our hurricane app. And that app turned out to be key to a lot of people in the area who needed that emergency preparedness information. During a 6-week period, both in the immediate run-up to Superstorm Sandy and in the response period afterwards, we actually collected about 2 million pieces of data through our Digital Operations Center. We had 30 digital volunteers who were working on this product, and they looked at these pieces of data, and they flagged about 300 of them. And they took those pieces of data and they moved them through our operational system and tracked them. And one of the things that we found is that 86 of those pieces of data actually resulted in some kind of concrete change to our service delivery. So because we were hearing feedback from people who needed the information, we were able to move supply trucks to a different location. We would send more cots or more blankets to a shelter that needed them. And we hadn't tracked that before. And while that sounds like a very small percentage, it really was groundbreaking for us because it was the first time we had actually taken data from the social media community and really used it to affect our operational decision making. And so it was really an incredible event for us. It was really the first time that we quantified how that data could affect decisions. And so now we're making adjustments in our processes across the board to ensure that we can better operationalize social data for future disasters. And we're making sure that we don't just look at the social data in a silo, but we're also merging it with other pieces of situational awareness. So the information that comes in from government, the information that comes in from response partners on the ground, information that's coming in through traditional media. And we're trying to look at that as a common operating picture. One of the biggest lessons I believe that we learned is that you can't view technology in a silo, that you really have to look at it alongside all of the other information that you're getting, and that the information is wonderful, but unless you have the human collaboration behind the technology, you're not going to be able to use it to make great operational decisions. So the human collaboration piece is very key and something that even in this technological world, we can't forget about that. So a couple of just key things, I think. It's not necessarily the data that you're collecting all the time, but it's how you operationalize that data and make it useful for decision makers that will really affect change. And there's also this enormous untapped opportunity to engage people as volunteers in this space. And so when you merge the people with the data and the technology, you can do some tremendous things.
Really fantastic presentation, Laura. Raised a number of issues. One question that we have from Marco, who writes from Hungary, is with respect to some of these new technological innovations that are being used in response, especially those that collect and process personally identifiable information, for example, biometrics. He suggests that there's a lack of clarity or universally accepted safeguards for processing that information. And he wonders, how do you evaluate the risk of collecting and managing that information, and who's working on any sorts of solutions for that?
That's a great question. It's interesting because I think that there's a sort of expectation, particularly in the social media space, that the information is sort of in a public open source format. And so I think we're dealing with questions that sort of go to a change in the public's expectation around how much of their information will be kept private versus sort of the ethical considerations around that. So it's a very good question, and I'm not sure that it's one anyone has come to a definitive answer on at this point.
So, Laura, one of the things I really like about technology is it can sometimes allow for high-tech, high-touch, and one example of that is a digital hug. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. One of the things that we have really tried to engage in at the American Red Cross is to provide emotional support. And I think the psychosocial area is one place that's kind of unexplored, and being able to have that high touch with technology is a very interesting concept. So one of the things that we do when we scan the social universe and we see people that are having anxiety, having a hard time with emergencies, we reach out and say, hi, we're with the Red Cross. Here's a piece of actionable information that you can act on to help you in this situation. We're thinking about you, and we give a digital hug. And for us, it's the word hug in two parentheses. And so that's a digital hug from the American Red Cross. And people have really responded well to that. So it's a little bit of a way to reach out and have some touch in that technology.
Fantastic, Laura. Thank you so much. I'd like to turn now to Rebecca Curzon. Rebecca is a senior program manager in corporate citizenship and corporate affairs for IBM. Ms. Curzon manages IBM's global involvement in humanitarian disaster response, which sees IBM technology applied to meet critical needs following a disaster and used to develop smarter and more resilient cities. Ms. Curzon works with global teams to integrate citizenship into IBM's business and provides its citizenship professionals with strategies for integrating grants to support local, nonprofit, and education organizations worldwide. In 2003, she helped launch a global portal that supports IBM staff to volunteer in their communities. She represents IBM on the Working Group for Disaster Assistance at the Business Civic Leadership Center at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Rebecca, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Enzo. It's a pleasure to be here. So here today, I'm in the presence of people who are truly experts in the disaster domain, who are part of organizations with humanitarian work as a core part of mission. So why is IBM here? Well, the answer is that IBM, an enterprise solutions company that helps build a smarter planet, is also a corporate citizen, using our technology, our expertise, and our solutions to help address societal challenges. Disaster is without question one of the most riveting societal challenges today. We try to help. We've helped in 43 disasters in 23 countries since 2001. And that is both large-scale disasters like Haiti and Japan, as well as smaller, very local disasters. So today I hope to convey one corporation's perspective on disaster response in the context of the innovation that's described in this excellent report that we're launching today. I have three thoughts to convey about our disaster work. The first, it's aligned. It leverages what we do best as a company. We make grants to help government and nonprofit relief groups carry out their missions. These grants are based on core citizenship programs and on technologies from across the business. We don't grant cash because our partners have told us that our solutions and our expertise provide the longer-term value and the impact that they want. We also harness the energy of IBM volunteers across the world who want to use their skills to help. Volunteerism is core to our company values. They get initial online training through a course that we co-created with the American Red Cross. All of this is entirely consistent with our business strategy, so therefore it is sustainable within the priorities of our company. So second, our disaster work is done in partnership. We have long-standing alliances with community stakeholders through our grant-making, our volunteerism, and our thought leadership. We leverage these relationships when disaster occurs. We listen to the professionals talk about the challenges, and we look for the unmet need that our technology can help with. So, for instance, following the Japan Tohoku quake and tsunami, we created an e-wellness healthcare solution for an institute at Tsukuba University to support and promote health programs among displaced people, where stress and discomfort of living in shelters was having a serious negative health effect. In the flooding in Uttarakhand state in India, we used analytics to consolidate and match missing persons information to assist in family reunification. IBM volunteers also helped the local government there in India set up a Twitter forum for sharing critical emergency and recovery information with the community. And after Superstorm Sandy, we helped the New York City Police Department with IT damage assessments at 9 police precincts that were underwater. We also helped set up a volunteer reception center on Long Island that evolved into a long-term recovery hub. So much of the work that is described in the report is focused on preparedness. We also work with our partners in this area, with partners who have disaster field context and subject matter expertise. So, for instance, in advance of the Australian bushfire season coming up that begins November 1st, we are readying for a pilot with the Australian Red Cross of IBM Crisis Tracker, developed by IBM Research, which uses social analytics and machine automation to classify and sift through vast amounts of Twitter content real time, and then uses maps and interactive visualizations to display the data. The intent is to connect the needs in the community to the agencies that can help them. We also granted consulting to the the Building Resource Exchange in England, the BRE, which has been working in concert with the IFRC. And this consulting was to help plan a web-based implementation of their sustainable habitation methodology for use in a post-disaster scenario. And also, since 2008, we have worked in the Philippines, most recently with the country Red Cross, to support their ongoing use of Sahana, a free and open source disaster management application owned by the Sahana Software Foundation. IBMers were among the team of original volunteers that created Sahana following the 2004 Asian tsunami. So, okay, aligned and in partnership. And finally, the third point is our work is relevant. Our disaster response solutions include the trends that are talked about so much in the report: analytics, big data, cloud, social, and mobile. So, for instance, within 24 hours after the Ya'an quake in China last April, IBM volunteers created a new GIS mobile app to allow persons needing help to use their mobile devices to show their current location. And the Chilean Red Cross established their command center for the 2010 earthquake response based on IBM Smart Cloud for Social Business in combination with Sahana. Disaster response involves, as we all know, a longer-term continuum of activities that helps communities become more resilient, and we are very committed to that. After the China Ya'an quake, IBM donated our Pure Systems integrated expert technology to the Chengdu Institute of Care Life in support of their earthquake monitoring and early warning system, which has the potential long-term to provide earthquake warning services to over 80 million people. And the Chilean Red Cross is now using predictive analytics simulations for planning and to design emergency drills and exercises using previous disaster response data. Since the Tohoku quake, we have also brought our Smarter Cities Challenge teams to 3 cities in Japan to help them define a roadmap to greater resiliency. So to close, aligned, in partnership, and relevant. We are one among many, many corporations who contribute after disaster. We all want to help the communities in which we live and work. IBM will continue to innovate and to try to be essential to our communities and to our partners.
Rebecca, thank you so much for that presentation. One of the participants asks, how do relatively few volunteers, although growing in number, manage such vast quantities of data that come in any given disaster, enormous numbers of tweets and data from other sources as well? Are there technological solutions that help move through, sift through, and identify key aspects of that data so that decisions can be made in a timely way?
Good question. I mentioned a project called IBM Crisis Tracker. It's the Australian Crisis Tracker is about to be launched as a pilot, as I mentioned, with the Australian Red Cross. That is an application that takes tweets and vast amounts of Twitter feed, and it is able to use our analytics to classify and group those tweets into related clusters of tweets, and then to take those clusters, essentially summarize them into essentially a story, a set of words that describe that tweet, and then use those words to classify them according to the type of crisis, the type of issue, the type of challenge, the need that is being expressed. It's also able to geocode those the information, and it's able then to use volunteers who will manually validate the summary story to ensure that it is all the indicators show that it's accurate. And the intention is to roll this project, if it, assuming the pilot is successful, to make this project available more widely in Australia so that numerous community agencies will be able to have access to the dashboard that presents the map with the clustered tweets on it in an intuitive interface, which allows for action to take place. So this is one example. This is, of course, not based entirely on volunteer work. It is based on our analytics technology and on the machine learning that the technology can engage in as the information is being sorted. So, volunteers are essential to so much. Luckily, we are seeing ways to have big data be managed so that as volunteers begin to interact with it, there is a reasonable role for volunteers to play.
Really very interesting. And maybe one just follow-on question. Based on your experiences with IBM, what suggestions would you have for other corporations looking to get into the space, looking to partner with humanitarian organizations? Are there lessons that you can draw from that experience to help them, to encourage them to engage? And what are some lessons learned that you would provide?
Very good question. I think that the first 2 points that I made about being aligned and being in partnership have been critical for our ability to feel that we are having a positive impact after disaster. And I would say those 2 principles really apply to many corporations. If you do what you do best, if you apply what your expertise as a company is to the situation, then you can't help but have a positive impact. It's if you try to do something different than you do ordinarily that you may not have the impact that you wish to have. It is also essential to be able to develop relationships with partners in quiet time, in peacetime. And we do that already because of our ongoing community investment through grant making and through engagement locally. So being able to leverage those relationships to get us to new relationships during disaster response, or being able to engage in the relationships with those partners for preparedness and resiliency work, which we do commercially as well as philanthropically before disaster occurs, is a way to be sustainable.
Thanks so much, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Well, Rebecca, we're really fortunate to have you in such a leadership position with IBM and so helpful in what you do. I have the privilege of introducing Matthias Schmale now, and I will admit I am probably his biggest fan on the planet. He's Undersecretary General for National Societies and Knowledge Development at the International Federation for Red Cross and Red Crescent. Matthias oversees the IFRC's work with 187 Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies, strengthening their organizational and delivery capacities and improving their volunteering and youth action. He's really done a little bit of everything at the Federation and beyond. He has worked in field operations in Ethiopia, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Sudan, and Kenya, most notably for the German Agency for Technical Cooperation and Save the Children Alliance as Deputy CEO. He continues to amaze. He's fluent in German and in English and speaks French and Kiswahili. Matthias holds a PhD from Berlin Free University in Development Economics. So I say to you, Mzee, habari gani?
Asante sana, Harold, and I can assure you being fans is a mutual thing. Allow me to highlight in my brief remarks one key message, which is that technology must remain a means to an end in humanitarian action, not an end in itself. And let me back that up with 5 challenges that are in most cases also opportunities. The first one is we are at risk of only listening to those who are connected and excluding those who are not. So we need to ensure, as we take the use of technology in our humanitarian action forward, that we bridge what is sometimes called the digital divide. So in the Red Cross, Red Crescent world, for example, we found out a couple of years ago that 1/3 of our national organizations are not connected to the internet. Similarly, the report points out that the real number of mobile users worldwide is estimated to be almost 50% of the 6 billion that are actually connected to mobile phones. But at the same time, these sobering statistics should not block progress. As has already been alluded to, we have, in situations that may be described as dire and poor, examples of those not connected all of a sudden being connected and taking over and finding solutions. I'm thinking of Haiti, for example, which, as has been mentioned, where SMS technology played a major role. Second challenge, the huge volume of data. It's been already mentioned. As an example, the report again points out that 177 million tweets were issued the day after the triple disaster in Japan. How can this be absorbed? Now, we've heard already that, in fact, technological solutions are being found. The examples from IBM just now speak to that. At the same time, again, we must be vigilant in assessing who and how it is being judged what information is relevant. Again, the report gives an example from Somalia, where a group claims to speak on behalf of all Somali people. But if you look at who is connected in Somalia, that just cannot be the case.